we couldn't have wiggled up and down around for a while and then come down. But we have at least one. And this theorem allows us to come up with ideas on how do we find it. And one program you can do, and it's relatively easy to program computers to do this, is to, if you found one positive and one negative, we know it has to cross somewhere. So divide that in half. Now find out if you're positive or negative at that point. Here in my picture we're still negative, so then look at the new interval. Intermediate value theorem says we have to have a 0. Cut it in half. That one's positive. So we now have that narrowed down between these two guys. Cut it in half. Cut it in half. And you will keep zeroing in on that 0. And that is one method of finding zeros. So hopefully that's one reason where we use this intermediate value theorem. It's finding those zeros. The last thing we have in this thing, before we start doing some examples in another video, is talking about local extremes. Now we talked about a max and a min with polynomials, or parabolas, which were of degree 2. We had one max or a min. We either had a max or a min, but we only had one extreme. One extreme. Or extrema, to be. That's what they're talking about when they're saying extremes. So if we have a polynomial of nth degree, we will have at most n minus 1 extremes. So degree 2 will have at most one extreme. If we had a degree 5, it could have 4 extremes. If we had a degree 6, it could have 5 extremes. How to find those extremas? We need calculus. So that's something to think of when you're going into that next course. How am I going to get them? You might be asking yourselves, how do I find where those are? Well, quadratic we learned, it's at the vertex. A cubic and anything higher than that, it gets a little bit more detailed. So that's where you need to go on into calculus, and you'll learn how to do that there. But we're just going to say that we know that if you have a 5th degree polynomial, we could have 4 extremes. And we'll talk more about what a 5th degree polynomial looks like later. I am going to stop the video here and come back a little bit with the next video, and we're actually going to start graphing some polynomials. How do we take all of this information that we just learned, talking about zeros, talking about extremes, talking about the end behavior, how do we go about graphing, roughly graphing a quadratic or a cubic or any degree polynomial for that matter? I will tell you, for the most part, most generic polynomials we're not going to be able to handle. So the ones that we deal with are ones that have been worked so that they do work out for us. And I'll discuss that as we're doing some of these problems. So you can see that, oh, thank goodness that they're nice. Because we could create a polynomial that we just don't want to deal with. So in the next video, we will do some examples.